It started with quiet talk in student rooms and secret chat groups, a rumor that the election had been stolen in the middle of the night. Within hours, the streets of Dar es Salaam were roaring. Young people filled every open space, every road, carrying signs and phones held high. They called themselves the Gen Z Army, and the demand was simple: count our votes. But when the protests reached the airport, everything changed. Could a generation raised on internet trends bring down a government built on silence? Let's find out. Dar es Salaam, 11:48 p.m. The night was full of tension. From the ocean front to the airport edges, the city shook with anger. Word spread fast. Vote boxes were being flown out of the country for checking. To the young protesters, that meant one thing: proof of theft escaping into the sky. Thousands rushed toward the airport gates. Some came on motorcycles, others on foot, faces covered in cloth. By midnight, bright lights lit the runway, showing a sea of youth blocking runways, chanting, "No flight till the truth lands." Inside the building, security officers panicked. Planes waiting for permission were stopped, the pilots staring out at the growing crowd. In one corner of the control tower, an air traffic officer whispered, "They've taken over everything, even the fuel yard." Police backup arrived, shields shining under emergency lights. But the Gen Z Army was without weapons. Their tools were phones and numbers. Live video streams exploded across the internet, watched by millions. Short tags like "Mbandala we voted" and "Mbana Sky Your Voice" were popular within minutes. When the first tear gas cans flew, the crowd didn't run away. They stood, coughing and singing the national song through burning throats. By 2 a.m., the airport was fully surrounded. Flights cancelled, communication stopped, the skies over Tanzania went silent. For the first time, the government realized it wasn't facing a protest. It was facing a generation that had stopped being afraid. But what began as resistance on the runway soon spread far beyond the city. Across the nation, the silence of fear was breaking, and the government's hold began to slip. 4:23 a.m., Dar es Salaam, International Airport. The city woke up to total confusion. Smoke from burnt blockades floated over the buildings. Police trucks, once symbols of power, now burned slowly near the gates. Students carried the injured to quick clinics made from luggage carts. By dawn, the entire airport had become a symbol of fighting back. The protesters had painted slogans on the runway. "We are the future." Volunteers passed food and water through human lines. No leader gave orders. The movement was spread out, self-run, alive. Government officials, watching from the presidential palace, debated, saying the country was in trouble. "We can't shoot them," one minister whispered. "They are our own children." But pressure grew. The president's closest group wanted force, not talk. Then came the spark. A video was leaked showing vote papers, untouched, stacked in boxes, being loaded into a private jet marked state property. Within minutes, the clip flooded social media. The world saw it, the proof of cheating. Strong anger became unstoppable. At noon, the military was sent out. Helicopters circled above the crowds, their shadows sweeping across broken glass and flags. Yet when soldiers came down, some removed their helmets and stood beside the youth. They refused orders to shoot. That was the moment the world understood. This was not chaos. This was a movement taking back a nation. As the airport fell into the hands of the people, eyes turned to the capital, Dodoma. There, behind guarded walls, the president faced the final question: stay and fight, or run away into the night? Dodoma, 8:35 a.m. The sun rose over a capital city split. Government radio urged quiet, but few were listening. The internet had already chosen its side. Across Tanzania, live streams replaced news reporters, and digital posters called for large marches under one slogan: "No future without freedom." University students marched through Dodoma streets, joined by taxi drivers, nurses, and even police families. The sound of chanting drowned out traffic. The Gen Z Army had become more than protesters. They were a network, organized through secret messages, fueled by shared anger and hope. Inside the palace, President Samia Suluhu faced a shrinking group of advisors. Every hour brought new reports: airports blocked, police leaving, cities joining the strike. By afternoon, the internet went dark. The government had shut it down, or so they thought. Within minutes, young engineers turned on backup systems, sending signals through Kenya and South Africa. Short tags reappeared, stronger than ever. The blackout had failed. The breaking point came when protesters surrounded the state television station. Instead of breaking into it, they used small flying devices to show their message across the city skyline. "We are the voice you tried to mute." The image became very popular worldwide. As night fell, the last message from the presidential office was a single coded transmission: Operation Eagle. It meant only one thing: the president was preparing to run away. Dar es Salaam, 6:10 a.m. The sound of helicopter blades cut through the hot, wet morning air. Helicopters hung above the city, carrying officials desperate to escape. But below, tens of thousands of protesters held firm on the runway, waving flags made from torn election banners. The runways, once symbols of travel and connection, had become main battle lines of resistance. As dawn broke, the Gen Z army divided into groups. Some guarded entry points, others kept supply routes safe. Food, medicine, and even portable chargers flowed in from nearby neighborhoods. The organization stunned the government. There was no single leader to arrest, no central command to destroy. By 8 a.m., the army had surrounded the airport again, this time with orders to clear all citizens. Speakers loudly warned them, but the crowd stood still, holding hands, chanting, "We are the land. You cannot clear us from ourselves." In a powerful moment, a line of mothers joined their children on the runway. They placed flowers on the ground and knelt before the soldiers. Cameras captured the scene. A silent army facing another armed one. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Then, one soldier dropped his weapon. Then, another. The order to shoot never came. Across Tanzania, similar acts of resistance spread. Train stations, bridges, and ports filled with people refusing to move. It was no longer a protest. It was paralysis. The government's power system, both physical and political, had fallen under the weight of its own people. But while the runways held firm, the palace in Dodoma shook. Inside its walls, betrayal grew, and fear found its voice. Dodoma, 2:20 p.m. The capital's air was heavy with smoke and slogans. Tear gas cans rolled through the streets, clinking like money of control. Yet even as police fired, they were outnumbered. Protesters formed human lines, passing water, vinegar, and courage. In one corner of the city, students broke into state television again. This time, they showed live video of police violence, alongside real-time facts. Viewers around the world watched as truth broke through control, one live stream at a time. The ruler's communication network failed. Leaked audio of senior ministers arguing went very popular. "We should have never touched the votes," one shouted. "Now we've lost the country." The damage was done. By late afternoon, a group of black expensive cars rushed toward the presidential palace, the last loyal guards taking the leader away. But the roads were blocked. Protesters had built barriers on Dodoma's main roads with buses, cars, and large containers. Small flying devices hung above, showing the scene to millions. A teenage protester named Musa, live on camera, said simply, "We are not the future anymore. We are the present." His words spread faster than the tear gas. That night, the government declared a ban on being outside, but the people ignored it. Instead, they lit candles in the streets, singing old independence songs, reminders of what freedom once meant. Highway to Dodoma Airport, 11:45 p.m. The president's group of cars raced down the empty highway, lights cutting through the dark. Inside one protected vehicle, Samia Suluhu sat silent, staring out the window at the faint glow of burning barriers in the distance. Her ministers spoke in quick whispers. "We can reach the airbase by midnight," one said. But the driver knew otherwise. Every route had been mapped, every escape expected. The Gen Z Army's digital lookouts had already shared the group's location. Back in the capital, military commanders argued over radio channels. Some called for giving up, others for talks. But no one wanted to be the last to defend a dying system. At 12:03 a.m., the commander of the Central Division went live on national radio, saying, "We will no longer turn our guns on our own." The ruler's main support broke.
Moments later, the cars stopped. Ahead, a wall of protesters stood, thousands deep, blocking the runway. Bright lights shone on banners reading, "Our sky, our nation." The president's guards raised their rifles, but then lowered them. The crowd parted just enough for the vehicles to turn back. Inside her car, Suluhu let out a breath, her face reflected and broken in the glass. For the first time, power was no longer hers to command. The road ahead, real and political, was closed. By morning, the news broke worldwide. President runs from capital after airport takeover. Across social media, one image spread. A young protester standing on the runway, arms spread wide, facing the dawn. Dodoma, 6:15 a.m. The sun rose over a city reborn from chaos. The sound of gunshots had stopped, replaced by songs that rolled through the streets like thunder. "We are one nation, one voice," they shouted, their echoes bouncing off broken walls and burnt vehicles. The government's loudspeakers, once shouting orders and fake stories, were now silent. At the National Square, tens of thousands gathered. They carried signs made from old cardboard, written on with one demand: "Let the people speak." For the first time in years, soldiers joined the crowd instead of guarding it. Some still wore their uniforms, badges shining in the morning light. The protest had become something bigger than politics. It was spiritual, generational. Religious leaders marched beside rappers, farmers beside university students. Overhead, small flying devices hovered, capturing the moment that no control could hide. In the heart of the square, a group of young women unrolled a flag. Not the national flag, but a white cloth painted with the words, "Justice is our homeland." The image spread across the internet, showing a nation that was rewriting its own meaning of love of country. Inside a nearby office, the remaining officials argued about what to do. "We cannot use force anymore," one said. "If we shoot, the world will see." But the world was already watching, and the people were no longer afraid. That morning, a journalist asked a question that would define the movement. If the youth can silence the guns, can the government silence the truth? Coastal Air Base, Eastern Tanzania, 9:42 a.m. The president's plane waited on the far end of the runway, its engines running slowly, its symbol covered with cloth to hide its identity. Only a handful of guards remained, men chosen for loyalty or at least fear. Samia Suluhu stepped out of the cars, face pale, scarf flying in the sea wind. The base commander saluted, though his eyes showed uncertainty. "Madam, air permission is not confirmed," he muttered. "The control tower says protesters are blocking all channels." She didn't answer. The air crackled with the sound of distant chanting, hundreds of voices approaching from the city edges. Her aides whispered, "We must go now." But she held back. Somewhere in her mind, she knew every ruler who runs away under the cover of dawn leaves behind a shadow that history never forgets. As the engines roared, a young officer ran toward the plane, shouting, "Ma'am, the tower's been taken." Within minutes, the runway lights went dark. Protesters had cut the power. The plane sat stuck, surrounded by the very citizens it once ruled. On social media, video exploded. "Leader trapped at Coastal Air Base." Short tags flooded every part of the internet. Around the world, news reporters repeated one line: "The people have stopped the ruler." At 10:17 a.m., the president's cars turned back toward the capital with military protection. The escape had failed. What began as a flight for survival became a march of giving up. Dodoma, 3 p.m. By afternoon, the skies above Dodoma were gray with smoke, not from war, but from celebration. People burned government posters, campaign banners, and photos of bad ministers. The city was alive, messy, loud, defiant. Cafes reopened, serving tea to strangers who had once feared to speak politics openly. Public workers returned to offices without waiting for permission. Everywhere, conversations repeated with a single idea: if we brought them down, what can we build? Meanwhile, the old parliament building was surrounded. Protesters demanded the quitting of all officials linked to the election scandal. Some tried to run away, others stayed, claiming they had no part in the fraud. But the people wanted answers. Leaked papers moved around online showing how votes had been changed, names erased, and results faked. By evening, huge crowds filled Freedom Boulevard. Songs replaced slogans, laughter replaced fear. In one powerful scene, police officers laid their shields on the ground, a sign of peace. The crowd applauded, some crying openly. And yet, beneath the celebration, worry grew. Who would lead now? Could the same youth who fought in the streets run a country? Outside embassies, foreign messengers watched closely, writing statements and figuring out interests. The revolution was now international property. Still, for one brief moment, Tanzania stood proud, a symbol that a digital generation could remove a strong ruler without foreign guns or golden deals. Presidential office, 6:45 a.m. The air inside the old presidential building felt different now, colder, heavier, stripped of pride. The guards at the gate no longer saluted. They simply nodded as ministers entered one by one, their faces pale, eyes looking toward the protesters outside the iron fence. President Samia Suluhu sat at the end of the long wooden table surrounded by opposition figures and youth leaders. For the first time, her voice shook slightly as she spoke. We must restore order together. Across the table sat Zuri Mikwawa, a 25-year-old student leader whose live streams had started millions. She leaned forward, voice sharp but calm. Order is not what we lost, she said. Truth is. Outside, the streets roared in expectation. Every major news company showed the talks live. The youth demanded full openness, the release of political prisoners, the stopping of the fake election, and the writing of a new constitution. An advisor whispered to the president, "Give them something before the army acts." The clock ticked louder with every second. Finally, at 8:12 a.m., a statement was signed. Temporary power change to a council led by citizens. The room erupted in shock. The president had just given up authority. On the streets, people wept. Bells rang from churches and mosques alike. But for the old, powerful people, it was not the sound of peace. It was the beginning of being sent away. Dar es Salaam, 10:20 p.m. In a dimly lit rich house overlooking the ocean, men in suits whispered over secret phones. They were former ministers, rich business owners, and spy chiefs. Ghosts of the old system. The change cannot stand, one muttered. If the youth rule, our contracts die. Another added, we can't fight them with guns, but with data, yes. They began planning a digital attack. Thousands of fake accounts flooded social media, spreading doubt about the new council's right to rule. Made-up leaks claimed corruption, foreign influence, even betrayal among protest leaders. Within hours, confusion returned. Short tags that once joined the people now tore them apart. Freedom now became fake reform. Meanwhile, shipments of secret laptops and hidden money moved through private airbases. They called it Operation Mirrorfall, a silent try to break the revolution from within. In Dodoma, Zuri's team began noticing strange patterns, sudden rises in false stories, fake pictures, and edited speeches. They're rewriting us in real time, she said sadly. The fight had shifted from streets to screens, a war of what people think. And as the night deepened, a single truth became clear. Even revolutions can be hacked. Central Command Headquarters, 4:55 a.m. General Mosi Kambere, head of the National Defense Corps, was known as the iron support of the ruler, a man feared by soldiers and politicians alike. Yet tonight, he sat alone in his office, watching video of protesters protecting wounded officers. They didn't shoot back, he murmured to himself. They carried our men. He called his assistants. We will not fight the people, he said clearly. We will keep the change safe. His words shocked the room. It was betrayal to some, saving grace to others. By dawn, his forces took over the spy office, securing systems that were showing false information. Over 14 terabytes of fake data were deleted in a single sweep, the largest digital cleanup in Tanzania's history. At 6:30 a.m., General Kambere appeared live on national TV beside Zuri and members of the interim council. His voice was steady. The army serves the people, not power. From this day, the guns of Tanzania will defend democracy. The announcement broke the digital block. Millions flooded the streets once more, this time not in protest, but in unity. For the first time in a generation, soldiers and citizens stood side by side, chanting one name, Tanzania. But the hardest test still waited, to turn revolution into government and ideals into law. The dawn of democracy had arrived, but the morning after would decide its fate. Dodoma, 9 a.m. The morning after the military's declaration felt unreal. The streets that once echoed with gunshots now shook with songs of hope. Crowds flooded the capital's roads, waving makeshift flags sewn from old shirts and painted banners reading, "The people rule now." Inside the parliament building, the temporary council gathered for the first official meeting. Zuri Mikwawa stood before the room, her voice steady and honest. "This is not a victory speech," she said. "It is a beginning. The revolution is not over. It has just entered the law." New laws were written with amazing speed. Political prisoners were freed. Media rules were lifted. Social platforms, once banned,
showed live video from inside government halls. For the first time, citizens could see power and question it. Yet beyond the city, things were weak. Farms and villages faced shortages. Old loyalists fought reforms. The council promised free elections within 6 months, but whispers grew. Would the movement survive its own success? International observers arrived, some with real support, others with secret plans. The West praised the youth. Neighboring states grew nervous. Still, for one brief moment, Tanzania stood proud, a symbol that a digital generation could overthrow a powerful ruler without foreign guns or golden deals. Dodoma. 1 year later, the runway once filled with tear gas and smoke now carried the first commercial flight of the new republic. Painted clearly on its side were the words, Tanzania Rising. Children waved from rooftops. Soldiers stood without weapons, smiling. The Gen Z signs had faded, but their message had not. No ruler is forever. Zuri, now serving as Minister of Civic Reforms, watched from the tower, the same place where a year ago chaos had begun. She whispered to herself, we were never fighting for power, we were fighting to be heard. Across the world, experts still debated how a nation of young protesters turned an election theft into a democratic awakening. But in the eyes of Tanzania's people, the answer was simple. They refused to be afraid. As the plane lifted off, the crowd below erupted in cheers. For the first time in decades, hope had taken flight. And that's the story of how a generation turned silence into revolution and protest into power. But the question remains, can freedom built on resistance truly last? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of power, protest, and people who changed their nations forever.